Fabio Alperovic, who is an impact investor and the founder of Fama Recapital. I hope I've mentioned it right, but Fabio, I'll then leave it to you to explain more about it. Please do take a seat. We're going to have in today's discussion Ms. Devina Milenge, who is a principal program coordinator in the African Development Bank and will bring the perspective of a development bank working heavily on this agenda. And we're going to have also with us today Ms. Beatriz Luz, who is the founder and CEO of Exchange for Change Brazil. Please join me here. I know we still are missing one of our panelists, but we'll make sure we'll bring her in the conversation as soon as she can be with us. And we're going to move immediately to the first and opening segment of our conversation, which is a little bit of a landscape overview of where we are today in terms of financing for sustainable consumption and production, financing for circular economy. We will have from the speakers very, very different perspective, very different viewpoints. And we will also explore as the conversation evolves how these are going to cut across. And I'm going to start by giving the floor to Fabio. Fabio, I'm trying to pass the microphone there and ask your perspective on what are the sustainable solutions of financing and financing for circular economy that you have seen. Fabio, you have a presentation? Okay, then we can leave it here. And what has been working well, and maybe what have been the obstacles or the challenges that you have experienced from your viewpoint. And Fabio, the floor is yours. And if you want to add anything to my introduction so that the participants know you best, please, I give you the floor.
Hello. Well, good afternoon, everyone. So, Elisa, thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you for the organizers. I'm very happy to be here with the other panelists and very happy to be in a panel with women. So it's something that's meaningful. And thank you very much for addressing this question by inviting each of the panelists. Just to give a brief introduction of myself, I'm a founder of an asset management company here in Brazil. I founded Fama Recapital back in 1993. Since then, I've been making, let's say, responsible investments, and it was much ahead of the existence of the ESG acronym. So it was about putting my personal values in the way we invest and try to avoid investing in companies that were harmful to the society or to the planet. 5 years later, I realized that just avoiding harmful companies was not enough. And so we decided to engage with companies to improve their practices. And that's the story for 31 years. And right now we have different products ranging from basic ESG equity fund to a climate fund, which does something very unique. So we invest in the most polluting companies in Latin America and try to decarbonize those companies from inside. We have a social bioeconomy fund that finances those who are really protecting the forest, including indigenous people, quilombola, riverine population, and small agriculture farmers. And we are about to launch other initiatives that are bringing not only financial return, but also impact. So I'm very happy to be here to have this kind of high-level discussions about very important themes. And I'll start with a remark that we are at a point that we have to question the model we are living in. We are so focused on the short-term profits and consumption over consumption that the model is not longer working. We have to rethink the model before only rethinking practices. If we don't change the model, the planet and the people will not survive for a long time. Those quick gains that we are looking for are damaging the planet so bad and producing inequalities of all sorts. And those inequalities it's a paradox, but those inequalities will harm the profits that people are seeking. So if we don't change the model, other basic initiatives that look like wonderful, they will not last for a long time. If we need to change the model, and as a participant of the financial market should lead this transformation. So we should not be the followers, we should be the leaders. And if we want to think in a different way, we have to think differently about what value is, what risk is, and what is the right measure of success. If we don't embrace a different mindset in which long-term social, environmental, and economical health all together are the real goals to pursue, we will have a big problem ahead. So we have to ask ourselves what kind of future we would like to finance.
Thank you very much, Fabio. You put the bar relatively high with your first question that you have been challenging the panel with. So we will be getting back to your question. But let me move to Davina with a first question that will be an opportunity to introduce yourself. And Davina, there's something we're particularly interested with, which is the Africa Circular Economy Facility and how it has worked. It has supported in Africa transformation towards circularity, and maybe what has achieved so far and what have you learned from it. And ideally, I already put to you the question that Fabio has started to put on the table: how can we finance the future that we are aiming to? But Davina, the floor is yours.
All right, thanks, Elisa. And indeed, as Fabio has said, we appreciate the opportunity. Thanks to the organizers of the forum. So I'm Davina Mirenje. I'm from the Africa Development Bank in our Circular Economy program that sits within our Climate Change and Green Growth Department. And maybe to give context before I get to the Africa Circular Economy Facility, just to give context on where we stand as climate finance, financing for development, just to show the glaring gap, because we are talking about the gap in this session. One, I had a few numbers that Africa, for their NDCs, these Paris Agreement country commitments, 2030, Africa needs about $3 trillion. Africa's total GDP stands about $3.1 trillion. It needs a further 1.3 trillion to 2030 per year to meet the SDGs. Now, when you look at the debt situation of the African countries, 24 countries are in debt distress. I think they pay about 74 billion or some figure there per year on debt servicing. Now, this is also the continent that has 30% of the global resources that are needed global minerals that are needed for the transition. It is also the continent that has 65% of arable land. So in terms of the resource side, this continent is highly endowed. But these are ingredients, they're not the meal. And so the financing is that gap in the middle to get us to achieve what Africa has as a potential. Now, in terms of circularity, we have been doing circularity for decades, or even as a historical fact by our traditional means, and of course by our level of industrialization, meaning that the stories around pollution and plastic waste, this is new to us. And what that means, we don't have the technologies to deal with them. And so there's a whole learning, a whole research and development that has to go into that for the markets that we have. And so there's a whole lot of shift in terms of discourse on what circular economy means to our markets and to the markets of the future. Understand that Africa is the continent that is going to have the biggest population. 70% of Africa's population will be urbanized by the time we get to 2050. Now, all these factors in a situation where you have very low levels of development, very low levels of industrialization, there's an opportunity, but there's also a challenge. So earlier today we talked about the circularity protocol that aims to kind of give the right discourse around how to deal with circular issues. So back to the circular economy facility. When the bank was invited to the World Circular Economy Forum in 2019, we didn't have a circular economy program. And we financed water harvesting, we financed sustainable agriculture, we financed waste management, but they were not termed circular economy. And that's also an issue. When we went to Finland, came back, and there was already countries in Africa that were starting to create a coalition called Africa Circular Economy Alliance, but it didn't have a home. So we decided as a bank, we have the convening power. We can bring and house the alliance in the bank to create visibility for it, because oftentimes these initiatives are so small that unless you have a continental platform holding them up, there is an issue. So the alliance, the facility was created very simply on three things, because it's really A-seed financing. We are in the first 3 years of the facility. One, to understand the business model for the small business SMEs, the small businesses, because that's where the jobs for youth are, because that is big on our agenda. Two, to understand how to finance those. We financed public sector, we finance big business. Our core business is not to finance SMEs, but they are very critical for the scale and speed that we need to protect the planet. Three was that we needed policies. Governments or countries needed to have national circular economy plans or roadmaps. So we are funding 5 of them. To start to have a conversation around NDC, around circular economy that would then go into a national determined contributions. As you know, next year is another round that countries are expected to submit their indices. So the facility was to support countries with their policies, support the alliance, but also most importantly support SMEs on businesses through incubations. Thank you. Very long story.
Thank you very much, Davina. And that's a very interesting story also to start from where Africa is standing now in terms of the trajectory to circularity, but also the wealth of resources it's bringing to the world, very critical for the energy transition and the role that the continent is going to play. Beatrice, we're going to jump to another part of the world because you yourself have been working very closely with a number of my colleagues in the UNEP Finance Initiative in a project called Go for SDGs to really understand the opportunities that exist in Latin America and the Caribbean around circularity and the financing. So I'm going to leave you the floor to bring us to the perspective of what is happening in the region that is hosting and what have been the lessons that you have been distilling when developing the study.
Thank you very much, Elisa. It's a great honor to be here listening to my colleagues. There are great examples demonstrating that it is possible to change. I think the main message that I wanted to start with, they have already pointed out, we are redesigning the system. The circular economy is not about solving the problem of waste, it's redesigning the system and avoiding the waste. So the first key message is that we need multi-stakeholder engagement and willingness to change. So we are living in a model that is the same since the Industrial Revolution, and now we realize that we have piles of waste and pollution, and we need to decouple growth from the extraction of natural resources. How do we do that? It's not just about circulating the end of the linear economy. It's about rethinking system. So I will bring into the perspective of this work that we've done. But first, just a little bit of an introduction about myself. I've been working with circular economy since 2015. I came across circular economy when I was in the plastic industry, and I saw the whole kind of discussion around the need of a new economy that is not just about new materials, new products, but it's about the whole ecosystem. I have the opportunity to do this work for UNEP Finance, which was about unlocking finance for circular economy in Latin America. And I will bring into the perspective the three main challenges and the three main opportunities. So the challenge, as they have already pointed out, circular economy finance demands a new mindset. So it's about different KPIs, it's about different value definition, and it's about expanded boundaries. And the most fascinating thing is that banks have the power to shift that by creating new incentives and phasing out non-circular products. But we need this education and understand what it means. Otherwise, we'll be financing projects that we will be just transferring problems from one place to the other. So the second point is that we need a proper classification of circular economy projects. So we need to understand, because there's lack of clarity about the definition. So we need to data. We won't have, a checklist that fits all. We are creating this economy, and we need multidisciplinary teams. We need the banks to be working together with the circular economy specialists and defining this set of data that everybody is asking for, all these indicators. And the third challenge is that knowledge integration is the core element to promote circularity. So we need this systemic view. We need this data to be able to define what circularity is about. But there are opportunities. And Davina mentioned the role of SMEs. We tend to keep the discussion in a high level with the big brands, but the small companies have the solution, have the power, but they need the support. So we need to build ecosystems that bring together, large organizations, small organizations, banks, to redesign the system. we need the large companies to look at their suppliers as their partners and not just creating guidelines and, okay, now you follow these guidelines. They need intellectual support. So finance is not just about money on their hands. It's about holding their hands and supporting them through this new process, new systems, and new value definitions. The second opportunity is that the financial market must join forces to overcome all of these barriers. So the development banks working with private banks and reducing the risks of the private finance. And the third opportunity is to understand these expanded boundaries of analysis. So what does this exactly mean? For example, if we are financing solar energy, are the banks asking what is going to happen with the solar panels, or they are just asking about the return of the investment on the solar energy that is being generated? So we need for the circular economy not to be the same of sustainable finance. We need to think about new value definitions, expanded boundaries, and time-bounded targets. So that's it for now.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. So we're going to have a bit of an interruption in our flow of the conversation because we're going to have a video coming on the screen, I believe, with one of our colleagues that is working specifically on public finance and the role that public finance could play into incentivizing private finance and private investment. So I think I've seen the video before coming up on the screen, so perfect. So that's my colleague Luciana, if we can play the video.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon, colleagues and distinguished delegates. It's a pleasure to join this conversation today. I must admit I'm a bit envious not to be there in person with you, but I'm sending my greetings from Geneva regardless. And I'm here to say that you all know that we have reached a very critical point globally where integrating circularity and sustainability into our financial strategies from the public and private sector is no longer optional. And the urgency of the action is very clear. Let me share some key numbers to set the stage because, as you know, at UNEP, we really do love doing a good gap analysis. So here you can see some data from our 2024 Global Resources Outlook that shows that global resource use has tripled over the past 50 years. And if you thought we're done consuming, you have to think again because it's actually projected to rise by 60% by 2060. And that's a lot of stuff basically to worry about. On another gap analysis report from our State of Financing for Nature report, we see that public and private finance for nature-based solutions has reached about 200 billion in 2022. That sounds quite impressive, right? But 82% of that came only from public finance. And what is the issue about these numbers? We're covering only 1/3 of the investments needed each year to meet the climate biodiversity and land targets by 2030 that countries have committed to. So to sum up all this data here, we are currently under budgeting, basically. And last but not least, I cannot forget about our other famous report on climate financing. On adaptation financing, the gap has really balanced to between 194 billion and 366 billion a year. And that's 10 to 18 times the current flow of public finance towards the same end. It looks like even that we missed a few zeros in our original estimates, actually. So we see that the science is very clear, but as they say, numbers don't lie, but experiences actually speak louder. So 2024 has given some tough lessons so far, especially in Brazil, and I can speak close to my heart on that one because I'm Brazilian, as you might have noticed by my accent. Brazil has faced severe floods in Rio Grande do Sul, driven by not only El Niño, but also by climate change. And on the other hand, Belo Horizonte, my hometown, hasn't had any rain in 136 days. And wildfires around Belo Horizonte are really making the headlines in Brazil, as you might have seen. So here we are talking about climate finance, circularity, and sustainability, while reality is really, really knocking at our door. In this scenario, public finance is actually the bedrock, the foundation on which everything else can be built. It sets the rules and creates the right incentives, and most important, reduce the risk for investments we need to tackle climate change and protect nature. Without it, the private finance might still be funding projects that aren't aligned with sustainability. And here's the catch. Despite the good intentions, governments are still spending heavily on less sustainable activities. In 2022, public subsidies for fossil fuels reached 7 trillion. And you heard it quite right, 7 trillion to keep burning carbon instead of investing in sustainable solutions. Just imagine the progress that we could have made globally if even a fraction of that amount went towards green technologies and conservation. And public finance isn't just about throwing money around. Of course, it's about creating the conditions for private finance to jump in. By funding research, for example, offering subsidies for green technology, and setting up very solid policy frameworks, public finance can help the private sector invest in sustainability. It's like setting up the perfect pitch for a great game. Without it, the private sector might be missing the ball. So let's not forget that the transition to low carbon, nature positive economies also needs to be just and inclusive. And I speak it again from a Brazilian perspective that grew up seeing a lot of inequality in my home country. A just transition ensures that the shift to sustainability doesn't leave anyone behind, especially those in the most vulnerable communities, who may bear the very blunt of climate change and environmental degradation. And I hope that some of the solutions you think about today include also this equality and justice in among its points. And I'm eager to see how these actionable strategies for mobilizing private finance and identify sustainable and successful models and bridging the finance gap may play out. And I hope, although I'm not there, to see some on the notes after the meeting, to see some good ideas that we can bring in the future to our projects as well. But it's not all bad. I know I've been giving really bad numbers so far, but we do have some successful models to share. And some examples actually come from Brazil. Like Brazil Ecological Transformation Plan is making strides with the sustainable sovereign bonds, a new credit system, and a 1 billion loan focused on green initiatives. They're showing basically that with the right mix of public and private investment, decarbonization and conservation can really take off. Ecuador debt for nature swap is another impressive example as well, turning 1.1 billion in debt savings into 450 million for conservation. And blended finance models like payment for ecosystem services are also proving that smart financial strategies can make a big impact on sustainable development. So as part of the UN Environment Agency, I have dedicated a lot of effort, and I would say my youth as well, to helping government shift public finance towards environmental goals. We have supported countries in using tools like results-efficient budget to ensure that expenditures align with sustainability targets and to help governments to really understand the trade-off between the different options. Over the past decade, the Partnership for Action on the Green Economy, or PAGE as we call it, which helped to co-organize this session with UNFFI, has worked with many countries, including Brazil and others here today, to reframe economic policies and really help to create the environment where private sectors can thrive and scale innovative solutions for financing for nature and climate as well. So to sum up and end my talk today, the role of public finance in advancing a circular economy is crucial. And I hope you had the time to also read some key action items I left on the screen for you regarding public finance, as it provides the really essential support through policy frameworks, subsidies, incentives needed to attract private sector investment. By bridging the funding gap and reducing investment risks, public finance can drive immediate impact and foster long-term systemic change as well. The successful model from Brazil and other countries that I hope you are able to share within the session illustrates the power of strategic public finance in mobilizing resources for sustainable development. As we conclude, I hope this panel has inspired you and provided some actionable insights in how we can better align public and private finance. And since I'm quite envious of you all enjoying the sunshine in Rio, I will leave you with a Brazilian proverb that devagar se vai ao longe. This means for the non-Portuguese speakers that slowly one goes far. And I hope it emphasizes that with steady and deliberate progress, we can lead to great achievements and to sustainable development goals. And by aligning our financial strategies from the public sector and the private sector, we hope to make this progress towards not only sustainable consumption and production, but also a just transition. I thank you very much for your time, and I hope you do enjoy your day in Rio and the rest of the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much to my colleague Luciana for bringing in some very, very interesting elements that will help us to shift in the second part of our conversation. A conversation that is now going to look a little bit more at what are the solutions that you have found through your experience that worked well. But what I would also be very much interested to hear is also where you feel that collectively we should be putting more efforts to bridging the gaps that Luciana and yourself have been alluding to, because that's very much what is going to be driving our next steps and the messages that will emerge from these 2 days of conversation. So, Fabio, if you do not mind, I go back to you again with starting your reflection on your experience of where you have seen these public and private financing coming together being successful, but also where you see we should be working more.
The microphone.
Okay, thank you very much for the question. The blended finance mechanism is pretty new, and it's a very smart solution to address some problems in financing situations in which the private capital does not want to finance, unfortunately. And so blended finance and impact investing share a very powerful synergy. However, I think we should think about some risks on this strategy. First is pretty much linked to what I said before about the financial market mindset, which is very much focused on maximizing profits and the short term. So if the mechanism of blended finance provided by the public sector is de-risking the private sector or increasing the returns from the private sector will never change, because they will always count on the public money to to keep the way they are. So I understand that the blended mechanism play a very important role in to act like a catalytic capital and to make a educational um, solution for the capital markets, and so to have contact to situations in which the private sector does not go by themselves, but it's a step. It's not. It shouldn't be the final goal of the final solution of how we address finance in the long run. There are several situations in which um, there's no market return in to address human rights problems or environmental problems. And in these cases, I really understand that public money it's very important to unlock capital to flow to these situations. But there are several other situations that's very easy to list in which impact investment can provide market returns. And so in those cases, the private capital should flow as a mainstream. Otherwise, we are only be a niche forever. So we must be careful to rely on blended finance too much. It's, as I said before, it's a step and should not be permanent. The main goal should be changing the system, and the financial market should. And it's very smart and very nimble, so the financial market should provide their own solutions to address problems. And we have to bear in mind that if we don't put in the calculation natural capital, for example, or the exhaustion of human rights, all the accounting of profit is wrong. So we are the economy is based on growth, and the planet is limited, has limited resources. So the equation is impossible. So of course we are talking here about circularity, and the basis behind circularity is exactly that we don't have an infinite planet, and so the financial market should understand the limits of the planet and adopt more circular mindset, including to make investments.
Fabio, thank you very much. And please, one of the point, and I'll leave some time to reflect on that, but one of the point I would also want to come in the next session, when we will have also a little bit more of a conversation with the participants in this session, is that you help us dissect what it entails changing mindset, and maybe thinking through what is the role that different group of participants that are here in the room could play going forward. But I'll park the question when we come to the discussion. Davina, I'm going to move to you with a very, very similar objective of helping us get a sense of where is the trajectory, what worked well in your experience on circular economy, on other aspects where you have seen public and private finance coming together, but also helping us see where you see this community can help unlock certain situations. And let me just give 1 second to welcome our next speaker, Christina. It's a huge honor that you are joining us for the panel. I'll let you settle with Davina taking a question, and then I'll be coming to you. Thank you very much. Davina, please.
Right. So financing circular economy is one of those, I guess, from our perspective, it's difficult to finance something that has no data, that has no standards, that has no benchmarks. So it is important that we have, in the last slide, there was among the activities that were proposed, there was something about green taxonomies. I highly recommend that, being in the business of having conversations almost on a regular basis of businesses that reach out to us, and oftentimes it's like, we can't finance you because we really cannot see the opportunity from the lens we are in. Now, why is that? It is because we don't have the taxonomy, so we can't really sift out the value of what they bring to us. And so that is extremely frustrating from where we sit and from, of course, the client, which is the business owners. Mostly the small business owners, but that is not restricted to them. So it's very, very important that we have the right taxonomies to determine the value and the impact, because ultimately we push our public resources, so there's accountability to that as well. So it's important that we have the benchmarks to determine that we deliver value out of the resources that we put through. But I think as we have this conversation, what has worked? What has worked is where we have collisions, where we have partnerships. Because even before the taxonomies come, there's this value in peer learning. And so when we didn't create it, when we hosted the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, the value was to create visibility or even de-risk fear around how to engage in circular economy. And the back of that fear was banning plastic pollution. So most countries will be very wary of this. One, because they're still behind there. I have my lunch in a plastic bag because the service provider, the small business there, that's the only way. So every other time he says ban plastic, he's like, you're killing my business. We need to have to find a way that his fears, the next neighbor who's doing something about a recycled plastic, and the other startups. So the whole value chain has to find space where the safe conversation on these issues. Unfortunately, these become very politicized and oftentimes in conferences. So everybody hides behind their flags and this speaks as per what they see. But if we could create collisions early on, I believe we can overcome that. And when there is consensus, finance will flow. I believe that from where we sit. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Davina, for becoming really very, very concrete and giving us homework that we can do jointly with you in taking this conversation forward. But allow me to introduce Dr. Cristina Reis, who is the Subsecretary of Sustainable Finance in the Ministry of Finance here in Brazil, who is doing an impressive work of bringing the conversation on finance and circular economy together here in the country. Cristina, I'm going to hand you the microphone to share a little bit of your experience with the participants in the session.
Right. Thank you very much. First of all, I apologize that I'm so late. There was a miscommunication and I was in the other museum waiting for this session. So, hello, the panelists. It's a pleasure to be here. I thank for the invitation. So, at the Ministry of Finance, we've been building the ecological transformation plan, which is a plan to bring coherence for the financial, regulatory, tax, and fiscal policies provided by the Ministry of Finance to the other plans and programs of the government. And so the idea is to, the three main objectives are generating decent jobs and increasing the productivity, promoting environmental and climate justice, and reducing inequalities. We might be acknowledged that in Brazil there are many kinds of inequalities. They are huge. They are not only personal or functional kinds of inequalities, but they are between people, between genders, between ethnical and racial groups, between territories, between the urban and the rural landscape and the regions of the country, which is super big. So the idea we looked at the challenge of decarbonizing the whole economy, and we split it the actions into 6 dimensions or axes, which are sustainable finance, circular economy. So circular economy is a pillar itself of the plan, bioeconomy and agricultural systems, energy transition, new infrastructure for adaptation, and technology density. And then inside each one of those pillars, there are many initiatives. I will mention some, such as the regulation of carbon markets, the development of the sustainable taxonomy, and this is something that we are trying to innovate in Brazil. It's not only green taxonomy, but a sustainable one with social commitments. And I must thank UNEP and the German cooperation for bringing technical support to this initiative. Other instruments I can mention are the sovereign sustainable bonds, which are providing resources for the climate fund, Fundo Clima, and that has boosted the investment for decarbonizing some industrial and forest sectors. And in circular economy, the government is now building the national strategy. I don't know, maybe Bia has mentioned that already. Sorry, I missed your speech. And the national strategy is led by the Ministry of Industrial Development and Trade and the Ministry of Environment. And the Ministry of Finance is supporting the initiative. And we are precisely trying to develop the financial instruments to develop the circular economy. And this is always a challenge because we still need to better understand how to fine-tune these financial policies. Although there is a understand what circular economy is, we know that it's not only about recycling or the last moments after consumption. It's about all the productive manufacturing or in productive processes of all activities. It's another way of doing things. And so we are now building this strategy and collaborating to find those specific instruments. And there is a law that is being discussed in the Congress about it as well. So we need the regulation to be able to provide the tools. So this is the landscape, but I'm here to answer the next questions and participate on the debate. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm going to jump back to Beatrice so that I give a moment of rest again. And again, with a similar perspective of looking forward, looking what are the challenges, what we have learned from what worked well, but also giving us a little bit of a homework of the areas where we should be focusing our efforts.
Well, thank you. This is a very exciting time in Brazil right now. I think you may not realize how far we've gone. So it's really amazing to see different ministers in Brazil working together. So I had the opportunity to assist on the development of the national strategy and how do we connect and why this is so relevant. I remember talking with the Brazilian Development Bank. I've been in this journey for more than 10 years. So the first discussions with the National Development Bank, trying to get them to support circular economy, the first thing they told me was, okay, we need a national vision first. without a national vision, we cannot create dedicated finance instruments. So for all of you here, this is a very important time that we are, and is an indication that yes, we are going this direction. So well done to everybody. So I'll try to bring some kind of hands-on examples, because all the recommendations that I have here, Davina has already mentioned, and Fabio, it is about, um, this work we demonstrated that we need a new framework, and this new framework is about new rules, new indicators, new boundaries of analysis, and new questions. There's no checklist for the banks, and the banks are very much concerned about, okay, how am I going to fund this? So taxonomy is a big thing, but how do we define something that we are still learning, as we are developing new products and services? So the first key message is that we need to bring all these stakeholders together and go straight into pilot projects. How do we also fund pilot projects? Davina mentioned about the small companies. So, let's learn, let's develop these indicators, and let's get the big companies and the small companies to go on the ground and develop these pilots and create this data that everybody wants. So not just sit behind the table trying to define what it means, let's go on and do it. So that's my first kind of recommendation. And there is a great opportunity, because the ones that are there leading the way and developing the data, they will move forward. For example, a lot of companies, and this happens in net zero, we are all setting net zero targets. But what about the how? How we are going to achieve these targets? Davina mentioned about coalitions, getting the companies and the government together. I will go further. The banks must get the circular experts on board, because it's new rules of the game. So we need to sit down in multidisciplinary teams and create these definitions together. Otherwise, we are very limited in our analysis. So we need new questions. And there's a good example of Bancolombia that has developed a partnership with the Ellen MacArthur Foundations. And then together they designed, new guidelines and tools. So we see companies, for example, setting up recycled content. Okay, we're gonna be 25% recycled content in my packaging, but then we have a Brazilian Circular Economy Hub. It's a coalition with multi-sectors and multi-companies, and then we start, understanding why they set the target, but they cannot make that target, because they say, oh, there isn't this material in the market. Well, there is. We know that there are SMEs and good recyclers, although but not on the price that we are willing to pay. So this finance also involves, as Fabio said, intangible indicators that need to come into the accountability. So we need not just value chain integration, but also internal integration of the decision-making power of the companies. So we talked about moving from taxonomy to pilots, creating connections internal into the business. And another important analysis is that we are talking about reverse logistics, and everybody says that reverse logistics is expensive. So let's talk let's think about reverse value chains. So it's about market pull and not market push. So these are terminologies that the banks understand. Yeah. So how do we create market? And this is something important for the government and the banks and the society to work together. How do we create new markets for new products? For example, I was talking with an organization that sells fabrics, sustainable fabrics made out of orange peels. We are big producers of orange juice. Why we are not producing this here? This company, this startup that sells sustainable fabrics, they are bringing this textiles from India. So how do we make this happen here in Brazil? So it's about building the ecosystems, building the coalitions, redefining the indicators, and value chain integration and design for circularity. These are the key points.
Thank you very much, Beatrice. The list is growing longer of tasks to work on. Christine, I'm coming back to you. Maybe going one layer deeper in granularity in getting to discover more your experience of having public finance instrument that support sustainable consumption and production, circular economy, where you have seen these have been successful. And if you also want to add to the list of areas or issues where you feel that this community should be working more to help you advance in your agendas.
So today I'm really happy because I was working in the Bioeconomy G20 initiative, and yesterday we finally had the agreement on 10 high-level principles for bioeconomy at this group. It was a journey that began last year at the G20 because the G20 was not leading with bioeconomy concepts. And after 1 year of discussions and many debates, the countries understood the importance of this as a trajectory, a path towards sustainable development. And I see that circular economy is also a very potential path towards sustainable development. Is another way of doing things, and of course of doing economic policies and financial policies as well. And then in this sense, as I was mentioning the ecological transformation plan, all the instruments now, they must consider this dimension of circular economy. And for instance, the Brazilian taxonomy has a environmental goal regarding circular economy specifically, and it's going to be developed at the second stage because, as Beatriz was saying, first we need the national strategy, and we need to and we need to also to understand the mitigation, adaptation, and later use criteria for classifying economic activity as sustainable, but also the social and economic goals related to the taxonomy that the Brazilians have incorporated. So our taxonomy is not only related to, reducing, removing carbon emissions, but also to promote gender equality and race equality. And we want it to be done as well in the activities that are promoting circular economy. So we still have also this challenge of defining the criteria, having a good data source and a clear data and information agenda. And so I fully agree that we need to connect and to improve this network or enlarge, better saying, this network that is studying, researching, analyzing circular economies to inform and to better design the economic policies, and also to better evaluate and monitor because we need it since the beginning. We know that the right way to build or to develop a public policy is with transparency and participation. And it's not easy to produce those kind of policies. And this is always, to be honest, my fear. We need the communities to participate on this process. So that's why the taxonomy now, for instance, has 200 members. It has a participative committee. We are organizing workshops and many dialogues. And it's a tough process, but it's also beautiful because that's the when you bring plurality and you hear the others, then you really learn, right? So I think that this is an example of a policy that is being built in this way. And I hope that the national strategy and plan of circular economy follows the same shape, let's say.
Thank you very much, Christina, for sharing this example. And I start alerting the participants that we may have few minutes towards the end of the session for questions. So please get ready. But in between, I'm going to give the floor to another of my colleagues, Joanna Pedro from the UNEP Finance Initiative, who is also going to come in with a little bit of perspective of the work of the UNEP Finance Initiative on just transition finance and specifically pathways for banking and insurance. Joanna, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Elisa, and thank you. It's so good to be in a panel. So UNEP FI, it's the financial initiative of UNEP, and we work with private financial institutions to try and bring together the sustainability agenda. So we do believe that this, as it was said so many times today already, we do believe that this is urgent and we need to all work together. So we need the private sector, we need the public sector. So this is also a way to work with the financial institutions in the private sector. And I actually work on social and human rights, and it's great to be in a panel where I don't need to explain why social and human rights is also relevant in the environmental agenda. And it's great to be in a conference where, in a forum that's from the start, the logic of it. So I'll do just a small presentation that will be based on a report that we did last year with the International Labour Organization. You have the QR code if you want, but just to say that this was co-worked together with private sector, banks and insurance, but also human rights associations, civil society associations, academia, with this idea of co-creating, of working together, and of getting solutions that we can do together. So on this report, we used the definition of just transition that is defined by the International Labour Organization. I'm just going to repeat it. I think a lot of us know, but just to, so it's about promoting environmental sustainable economies and practice that create decent jobs, that create opportunities, that reduce inequality, and that leave no one behind. So this is about maximizing what are the opportunities. So looking at what we are financing and what we are doing, and see what are the opportunities, how can we maximize them, and how can we look at the risks. In the report, we did look mostly at climate action, so just transition on climate action, but of course this goes beyond climate action. And I think one thing that is important, when we speak about just, when we put the just transition, we often hear that that's going to stop the transition that we need. We often actually hear it as an excuse on not to do the transition, because it seems like if we put, if we worry about people, we cannot worry about climate, or if we worry about nature and vice versa. And what we really try to put forward is that we cannot do one without the other. We need people to come along in the journey. We need to work together if we really want a transition to happen. So we really try to push for this. The transition needs to be just in order to happen. And this to say what I already mentioned, that we need all together in this transition. We need the public sector, the private sector, regulations, taxonomies, but also we need to be mindful that there will not be a silver bullet that will come and will have a solution for everything. So we need to take into consideration who is being affected, where are we working on, and what are the sectors that we are working on. And transitions will look different in sectors that are high emitting, or in sectors like solar that was mentioned here. Or so each sector will have their own ways of working. And I think one also thing that we sometimes are asked is, why do financial institutions, private financial institutions, care? I think we already saw also, we had already some on why, but clearly there is the part of risk management on how, by looking into the environmental and the social angle, we can ensure that projects are sustainable, that are done in a way that they do happen and that do bring returns in the long term, if we don't have just this short term, as it was mentioned. Rising regulatory pressure, but also rising the pressure of civil society associations, of institutional financiers. So there is a pressure that we see being raised. And then there is, of course, also the part of business opportunity, which is often the part that is more liked, but it's also a real part when we look at new forms that of technology that are not yet being financed, or when we looked at underserved market and people that don't have yet access to finance. So some issues there, but so the way that financial institutions can support the transition and can support it in a way that is just is, of course, in terms of financing and insurance activities that are aligned with a just transition, incentivizing positive change. We spoke here about walking with the clients and not only telling them what to do, but actually walking with them and explaining. Improving financial inclusion and the protection gap, especially on communities that are being affected by the transition, by climate risks, and improving the society readiness also for climate and transition-induced risks. And the way financial institutions can do this, it's two ways mostly. One is on their internal operations process. So how do they do, for instance, complying with social safeguards and performance standards? How we have examples of banks, for instance, that are hiring human rights specialists to start doing human rights due diligence when they are financing their projects. And we gave these examples. Other thing is on project offering. In the conference, in the session on women empowerment, we heard about the need, for instance, for indigenous women to be active on the actions, not being seen as only receiving, but also being active on actions. One of the examples on product offerings that we saw was actually energy community projects and indigenous-led projects that are actually bankable, and that the products are done in a way that can help the transition, but also have a sustainable part. We also have an example actually from Brazil with the Banco Família in the south of Brazil, which is a microfinance institution, and how they are actually bringing, for clients that they were already working on financial health and inclusion, how they are bringing climate and ways of consumption to so that they can make better use of the finance also that they are getting. And then the point that was just mentioned now on this having to rely on social dialogue and stakeholder engagement. It is more difficult, but it does make more sustainable and lasting solutions. I'm not going to go into the detail here, but I just wanted to say that if you do see the report, we try to put a lot of practical things, because one of the things also that we wanted to push forward is this need of integration. So this is how the report is structured, is on that diamond there, but this is actually how climate transition plans are structured. So this importance of structuring the things in a way that financial institutions are already doing. Most financial institutions are starting to do transition plans for climate. So if we want to introduce also these other considerations, let's also work in ways that can be combined. And so here just an example again on transition plans where we have one of the financial institutions that when they look at their clients and how their clients are transition away, in this case of on climate transition, they actually ask their clients who are going to be affected by these plans that you are putting in place? Who are the stakeholders being affected? What are the mitigation measures that are being put in place for these people? And how were these people consulted? So again, on working with the clients and not just leaving for the client a to-do list. And the importance of circular economy when we think also about the just transition. So beyond the part of financing these kind of models, on capital investment in those kind of models, I just wanted to also highlight the importance of the insurance sector, particularly in facilitating this business that can work in terms of sharing economy. Here is an example from a company in Switzerland, but there's several examples. It's an example of a company that rents furniture so that people, instead of buying new furniture, can rent furniture, and the need to actually have an insurance that will support in case there is a damage for this furniture. This is a new type of product that we need the financial sector to help with, namely the private sector, so that these models can move forward. And finally, almost ending, just to say we also worked gave some input papers to the G20, and I think all the things that are here are exactly things that were already said in the panel, so we're not going to repeat. But maybe just to say one thing, that we were very happy exactly with Brazil, because one of the recommendations is exactly that taxonomies should be looking at both environmental and social aspects. We should be looking at all the aspects together, and it's great to be in Brazil saying that, where you're exactly working on having both things together. So I'll leave it there, but thank you so much. And sorry, I just wanted just one last point to say that in the next step, we're actually going to pilot. We're speaking about the importance of pilot with some of financial institutions, these recommendations, and we are going to do a study on just transition in the Latin American region. So if there are people interested in just transition on the Latin American region with financial institutions, I'll be very happy also to speak a bit about it later.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Joanna, for the presentation and for giving insight on the report. I'm starting to look around to see whether there's any question for our experts. Don't be shy. So I'm going to come with the microphone myself. And I'm going to ask to briefly introduce yourself and indicate for whom the question is.
Hello, everyone. Sorry. I'm Luis. I am a business student at the University of São Paulo. My question is specific for Fabio and also for, for Beatrice. I forgot. Both of you talk about intrinsical and things who involves the price, and most of this is like externalities. And I think everyone here agree about the current situation is not a level play field for circular business with linear business and linear products. And my point of view, externalities can be a specific role in this level play, but how we do that? And do you think if we, like in Brazil, from the private sector or the public sector, externalities can be absorbed to linear products, or we have to provide green benefits to circular products? How is the best strategy? Thank you.
Fabio, would you want to come in? And then Beatrice? And I'm looking whether there are other questions meanwhile.
Luis, right? Thank you very much for the question and to be the first one, so you incentivize others to put more questions. I think it's a very good question because someone who has to pay the price. So we are in a transition, and some of them are afraid of this transition because they don't want to be in the vanguard and to be the first one, because the first mover perhaps will pay this price. On the other hand, to be the first mover will bring a lot of attention and brand equity and so on and so forth. So we have to understand the situation not as a picture but as a film. So there's a new generation coming, and perhaps within 10 years or 15 years they will have not only the power of consumption but also they will be um, decision makers in companies, in banks, and in the government, and so on and so forth. So things will eventually change because the consumer behavior will eventually change, and so companies should be smart enough. So it's a very cynical point of view because companies, if they keep the mindset of maximizing profits. So they have to understand the consumer, and the consumer will change. So the Z generation have much more alignment with this kind of talk we are having today than my generation that does not care at all. So companies have to think about that. Also, we perhaps need some support from regulation, so it's not happening. So regulators have to be a little bit more fierce and bring more regulation in order to change. All this talk we are having about ESG and environmental issues since 2020 perhaps made a bad side effect for regulators because they understand that the market is improving by its own, but it's not happening. So regulators have to wake up and put more regulation in order to, because we are in big danger. And also, I think that companies have to bear in mind that they are at risk, and at least the risk of litigation. So this is a reality even in Brazil. Ju- Perhaps most of you are not aware. As we speak, there are more than 80 climate litigation cases in Brazilian courts against companies. And we're not only talking about a small amount of money. Just to give an example, there's a, let's say, middle-size farming activity in the Amazon, 5,000 hectares. So it's not a large portion of land, and the litigation process is of 300 million reais, so roughly $60 million. So we are not in Brazil. For those who live here, know that environmental fines used to be a very small amount of money, and it made no changes for in behavior, because at the end the fine will be so little that they will keep devastating forests and deforestation and so on and so forth. So it's not anymore. So there are 80 litigation cases in Brazil, and it's scaling up the number very quickly. So the combination of a new generation, more regulation, and risk avoidance should change the mindset of companies.
Well, just to follow up on that, there are three main motivators for circular economy. One is mission, the other one is risk, the other one is opportunity. That serves for a lot of things, but which one would you like to pick first? So, do you like to wait for the regulation to come and then having to work on the risk? or do you want to see this as an opportunity? I will also mention the last point of the work that Joanna mentioned: partner, collaborate, build capacity. So my view is that no company will do it alone because it will be more expensive. We need to learn how to collaborate, build coalitions. And coalitions, they are not only business-led, but also coalitions that we can learn to work together with the government. So the companies will help the government to define what are the best policies and create incentives and not compliances. Uh, so I think this is the point in time that we really need to go hands-on and redevelop everything. There is a study called Circularity Gap Report. I think it was mentioned on the global protocol discussion. This study calculated the amount of materials that we are being able to circulate in comparison to how much we are taking from the ground. And in 2018, this number was 9%. And we also saw Luciana talking about the Global Resources Outlook. Do you know what's the number of the circularity gap now, at this point in time, 5, 6 years later? Do you think that is more or less? And it's 7.2% now, the gap. So we are reducing the circularity fraction. And this is because this doesn't mean that we are not working on the circularity business models and reusing and repairing. The point is, business are continue to extract a lot of materials from the ground in a factor that is 2 to 3 times more. So that's why it's so important to take action now, work together. So no company will do it alone. We need coalitions. We need independent, what we call transition brokers. And we need to think, how do we finance these transition brokers? Because they must be independent to be able to talk to all parts of the value chain, because there will be frictions. There will be a lot of frictions when we are trying to redesign the system. So we need organizations like the UN, to support companies like Brazil on writing roadmaps. Christina said about persistence. So it's not just something that we'll decide here now after 2 days of discussing. We need to come together every month, every 3 months, and going one step further. And there's a lot of things that has to happen at the same time. So the government cannot wait for the industry to do something. The industry cannot wait for the government to do, the legislation. We need everybody to work at the same time together and setting up common vision. And I think this is what we need to tell the companies. Bring the supply chain, bring even the competitor, because what we need to do is to share the investment, share the risks, and then we all share good results at the end.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Flávia Teixeira. I work for a private company in Brazil in the electric sector, generating only renewable energy. And my question is to Cristina, and maybe if you can bring other example in other countries, well, it would be useful. Well, Cristina, we have many construction sites where we've been trying to develop circularity and make better use from our scrap from construction sites, but we face an obstacle that it's intransponable. That is the state tax, the circulation tax that we need to pay once you have a residue, and it will be a sub-product for another sector. if we have to pay like 17, 19% of a value of a price that must be given for this, it's something that we really cannot develop. We are talking about tons of scraps, and it's something that we don't know how to face. I would like to know if you have it mapped, or if you have seen this situation in other countries or other reality. How can we address these difficulties?
Thank you, Flavia. Thank you for the question. I have heard this critique many times. To be very honest, I'm not on this area. I'm not at Receita or not in the fiscal policies areas. But I can say, now it's better. As far as I know, the tax reform is trying to correct this mistake, and I don't know how much it evolved, but there is this concern, and this I can promise. But I can't tell you more than that. I'm sorry.
Just a comment. I think this is a great example how the company must get together, perhaps within the sector, to demonstrate to the government the benefits of doing that. There is also lack of communication between different companies, different parts of the value chain, and even between, public and private representatives. And that's why I like to mention work hands-on on pilots, demonstrate the value of this material. Oh, but there's not incentive now at the moment. Okay, go there, apply the material, demonstrate in one project that you are creating a low carbon solution that is good for the business, that is good for the country, for our net zero targets. And then it's much easier to go to the government with something that is already working, and you just need to do the differentiate the tax system or incentive to scale up.
Thank you very much. And just an applause for the last responses. I'm going to try and wrap us up because I think we have gone beyond the time that we had been dedicated for the session. And we have heard very exciting homeworks that are here for all of us, starting from going more in depth on the experience that a number of countries are doing on taxonomies. And as Fabio was reminding us, all of this is very much framed into a change of mindset. So I feel that some of the elements that came up in the discussions were the ingredient of the change of mindset that you were alluding to. And Beatrice, you reminded us that this has to come with pilots, with testing on the ground. This has also to come, and this started from a recommendation from Davina, and Beatrice, you elaborated the idea of coalitions, people working together, sharing experience, sharing knowledge, but also bringing into the finance sector the right expertise and right insight on circular economy. You have been talking about new indicators, new ways of tracking progress and impact of what is happening, but also being very good at evaluating and monitoring the result of what is being done. You have insisted, Joanna, yourself as well in the presentation of working together, working with client, working with the value chain to really drive the transformation. You have incentivized Christina's to look for maybe a more complex solution of creating solution through social dialogue and stakeholder engagement, maybe more time consuming, but has the potential of being more durable over time. And I've heard also from a number of you a suggestion to link the conversation that we're having now with climate-related conversation, as so many in the finance sector are moving towards net zero plan, where resources management, which is at the basis of what we're discussing, are playing a very fundamental role. And I know I'm forgetting a lot of the recommendations that have been coming up, but there's quite a lot of homework for us going forward. And I'm really thrilled of all the insights that you as experts have been bringing to the conversation, and looking very much forward to continuing the dialogue and the conversation with you. Thank you all once again for being here with us today.
That's what I thought it on you meant, but I thought about I find that there was something controversial about it. I don't know what place or people that are really study. I don't get good convening. Hello, everyone. Can I just have your attention? I understand that we are there's a mic. From the I'm just trying to bring everybody's attention to the total and just ask you a bit of question, kind of like a warm up. Because I don't. You want to use the mic? Okay, okay, maybe. But I'm flexible, right? Hello, everyone. Hello. Are you tired? Was it a long day? Okay, so I hope that you already know the title of the session, Empowering Youth Through Sustainable Skills and Decent Work for Just Transition. So I would like to ask you like a question, simple question. When you hear um, skills, what are the keywords that come to your mind? Can anybody randomly like tell what are the keywords when you hear skills, learning, knowledge, practice, ability, capacity, and oh, and what do you think, young guys, we have here? What soft skills? Sorry, mastering. Um, okay, I think it's a thing we all think about, right? When we hear skills. Okay, what do you actually visualize when you hear green jobs? What comes to your like before your eyes when you hear green jobs? Recycling. That's not perhaps the best green jobs. Innovation. Solar plants. Regeneration. And sorry, eco-friendly. What else? Traditional knowledge. Interesting. Sustainability. But I was just trying to learn more from our youngsters here because this session is all about you young people. And yes, it's more like, I believe that it's more like an intergenerational dialogue that we are going to have in few minutes. But I was just trying to warm you up, and I hope that you are already like warmed up and ready to start the session. Should we start officially? Sure. Thank you. So yeah, it's an absolute honor to welcome all of you to this important thematic session organized by the Children and Youth Major Group, which I represent, the German Federal Ministry for Environment, Nature, Conservation, Nuclear Safety and Consumer Protection, the German Agency for the International Cooperation, and Go for SDGs from UNEP. We gathered today with a shared purpose to advance the integration of sustainable consumption and production practices with sustainable skills and decent work, particularly for youth and other marginalized communities. In a world where the environment is at a tipping point and unemployment is ever-existent problem, the youth play a critical role in shaping the future of our work. The Green Just for Youth Pact, launched as a legacy initiative from the Stockholm Plus 50 by UNEP, ILO, and UNICEF, is a powerful step towards a just and inclusive green transition. This pact has already laid the groundwork for something transformational, creating 1 million green jobs, new green jobs, greening existing ones, and fueling the entrepreneurial spirit of our youngsters around the globe. But today is more about the numbers. It's about systems change that all of our young people are demanding from across the world. It's about how we can harness sustainable consumption and production practices, whether reducing food waste, rethinking textile and fashion, and repurposing our plastics to create not just jobs, but meaningful and dignified livelihoods in high impact sectors that will define the future. It's about ensuring that young people are not left behind, but instead are fully equipped to lead, innovate, and thrive in green economy that we are building now. This is a moment of collaboration. Governments, businesses, corporates, educators, major stakeholder groups must work together to ensure that the transition to a green economy is not only environmentally sound, but also socially inclusive. Let this session be a hub for exchange of ideas, innovative solutions, and strategic partnerships. Thank you for your presence and commitment, and I look forward to these insightful discussions. Let's seize this moment together. Welcome once again, and obviously thanks to all of our partners who we are actually co-organizing this session. Now I have a noble responsibility to invite the next speaker, Mr. Vinicius Pinheiro, Director of International Labor Organization Office in Brazil. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Suhai, and good afternoon, everyone. I thank the major group. Two things were on the top of the list. First thing, of course, you want a place to live, a place that is safe, that is where we can live well. So environment and climate change was on the top of the list. And second, we want a job. We want an income. We want a job, not only any type of job, but we want a decent job. And for the ILO, a decent job is the one that is a formal job that provides you guarantees that you have access to labor rights, to social protection, that you are free to negotiate with your employer on the conditions of work. We call it collective bargaining. That's free of discrimination. That's free of child labor. That's free of forced labor. So it's not any type of job, but a job that provides you a meaning for your life. So these are the things that were among the top. You see top 5 concerns that youth around the world they raised. But the good news is that both things can be reached together. Actually, they are both part of the solution. And this is something that, in particular, in the early stages of the discussions about the environmental tradition, there was a lot of backlash coming from, in particular, from the productive sector. Still there is, about the number of jobs that will be lost, and the number of sectors, the business that will be closed. But what we have shown with our studies is that the the environmental transition has a net positive effect in jobs. For example, the latest study have shown that 8.9 million jobs can be created from here to 2030 if you transition to a low carbon economy. In Latin America, our study was that 15,000 jobs could be created. But of course, and the reason for that is because the environmental friendly sectors, they are more intensive in jobs. Now just think about, for example, oil platform in the middle of the ocean. Do you know how many people are employed there? Around 100 people, and they produce 80,000 gallons per day, and it's around 7 million cubic meters of gas per day. And of course, after that, there is a kind of supply chain that's quite very limited as well. We're controlled by 3 or 4 companies, at least in Brazil. Now, just think about the electric sector or the photovoltaic sector. Now, how many people are employed from the production of solar panels to distribution of solar panels, from the installation of solar panels, small businesses? So it's a totally different economic model with a huge impact. We have also done some studies showing that for each dollar invested in the green economy, you generate 50% more jobs than for the dollar invested in the fossil fuel economy. So the numbers are there, and shows clearly that we actually, by investing in the green economy, you're also tackling unemployment, you're also generating opportunities, in particular for young people. But of course, this doesn't happen for granted. It's not a granted issue. We don't think that there'll be an invisible hand that suddenly will shift people from one place to the other. Because we know that invisible hands actually are there to hold back changes, right? So they're much more the inertia side than the changing side. So we need some policies to be put in place. And the first one is skills. Now, exactly what Zuhai has mentioned. So we need people to be trained for the new jobs that are coming up. Not only environmental sector, but the digital sector. And this is actually one of the main problems that we are having now. And not here. In China, for example, over the last 3 years, there were 2 million jobs generated in the environmental sector, and they lost 600,000 jobs in the fossil fuel. And there is a huge problem in terms of finding people for those jobs, to fulfill those jobs. And this is happening everywhere. So there's a lot of job offers. They are not fulfilled. They're not filled because people are not qualified for the jobs. So a huge investment in skills. This is at the core of our pact. Now we want to work on curricula, work with universities, technical vocational training, institutions and companies, understand the needs and bridge these gaps. We also have here with UNICEF a pact in Brazil as well, supporting the government in terms of understanding better the needs of the market and having the education systems prepared to work with the young people and getting them ready to take those jobs. So skills is one. The second one is social protection. Of course, when you lose a job in one end, and you have to migrate to the other end, you need a kind of buffer scheme. Employment insurance, social protection systems, cash transfer schemes that need to be there, to rescue people from perhaps losing their jobs, and then helping them surviving, navigating through the transition until they get a job at the other end. Because you need to be frank about this discussion as well. Let's not be cynical. There will be people, they'll be losing their jobs, and there'll be business that will be closing. But the opportunities that are arising are much, many more jobs than the ones that will be destroyed. But this transition has to be managed well, and that's what we call just transition. So first skills, second social protection. Third, employment policies. That means employment intermediation. That means public employment services. And other types of employment policies that should be put in place. And fourth, social dialogue. And this is all what the ILO is about. ILO is a tripartite organization. We have workers and employers and governments in our board. And we discuss policies now that regulate, that promote decent work for all across the globe. And we believe that by chatting, by dialoguing, by putting heads together and trying to find common solutions, you become more sustainable as well in your decisions, because they have legitimacy. So let's, for example, shut down a car plant that's based on fossil fuel, and let's perhaps build another one to build electric cars. Okay, so let's discuss with the workers, employees and workers, what should we do? So some of them will need to be, reskilled. Others, unfortunately, they need to be, fired. But then let's find a solution. There's a time frame for that. So all these things can be part of a collective agreement. And for those who won't have a job, perhaps they'll have access to social protection. They'll be reskilled and put in another type of occupation. And this is what one of the miracles of the social dialogue. So you can really find solutions. Everybody is in agreement, and then you put policies. Then there is also a fifth element that was mentioned also in the first panel, is policies related to equality and equity. So there's a huge distribution effect in this transition, in particular for women. So we know, for example, that the addressing the gender gaps is one of the most important challenges related to the environmental transition, in particular for young people. So young women are already overrepresented among those without employment, education, training. 2 in every 3, the so-called NEETs, and they're also underrepresented in unemployment. And among those jobs, for example, in water supply chain, sewage, waste management, remediation activities, they account for only a quarter of these jobs. And that happens also in the digital economy. So women are clearly losing in both transitions, digital and environmental. So we need policies for that. And we need policies, of course, to address racial inequality, to address the impacts on indigenous peoples. So all these policies, they have to come together. And as I said, it's not the invisible hand that will solve that. So my main point here is that that's why we launched this pact. I think the pact that was launched in the COP27, right, in 2022, is one, perhaps, our little contribution to address this issue. Of course, we need much more. But at the COP27, together with UNICEF and UNEP, we decided to make our bit to create, and then we established these targets, create 1 million jobs, new green jobs by 2030, to green 1 million jobs, existing jobs by 2030, and to support at least 10,000 young entrepreneurs in establishing sustainable green business. So this is have very precise targets that are in place, focusing on policies related to employment creation, entrepreneurship, environmental education and reskilling, and empowerment and youth engagement. We are promoting curricula updates and partnerships across the education and skills development systems in ensuring employability efforts that are aligned with demands of a green economy, as I mentioned. And we would like to invite you to participate in this pact. We have an advisory group, a youth advisory group, that are following the idea that nothing without us, nothing about us without us, right? So we have invited an advisory young people to participate on this youth advisory group that will inform and guides our work. And now the success of the green jobs the Green Jobs for Youth Pact depends precisely on the widespread collaboration between government, business, civil society, academia, international organizations that should work together. So that's it. Thank you so much. So that over to you, right?
Yes. Thank you so much, Vinicius Pineiro. You can sit here if you want. So my name is Adriana Zacarias. I am Deputy Head of the One Planet Network, also the Head of COFA SDGs. I'm very happy to be here. So after this introduction of Vinicius from ILO on the Green Jobs for Youth Pact, we will have a fantastic panel that will look first at what are the enabling policies to really create these green jobs and green skills for youth. And we are here today in the OPN Forum talking about on reducing inequalities. You talk about how can we look at the social protection, how do we address the gender gap, the digital gap. So there are many things. When we were launching this pact, the main narrative is, if we are really serious about this transition to circular economy, the first question we have to ask is, are we equipping the young generations with the necessary skills? Is the academia, is the universities, the technical schools really updated and giving this new thinking, new paradigm that is needed? And the answers we found is, most of the times, the answer is no. We need rapid innovation, radical innovation, and that requires new skills. And also another thing that is being discussed in Stockholm Plus 50 and now in the Summit of the Future is the intergenerational responsibility. And one of those is to create these new skills. So that's one thing. So let me now invite my wonderful panelists. So Veronica Tomei, if you please come to the panel. She is the commissioner for the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development of the German Federal Ministry of Environment, Nature Conservation, Nuclear Safety, and Consumer Protection. That's the new thing, better known of the BMUV. So welcome, Veronica. Let me invite also Davina Milenge, the Principal Program Coordinator of Climate Change Green Growth Department in the African Development Bank. So please come and join us. Let me invite also Suher Kowis. You have met him, Suher Kosik. He is a global coordinator of the Children and Youth Major Group, and he is member of the Youth Advisory Group that Vinicius was mentioning, because the pact is for youth and with youth, and that's why it's led by a youth advisory group that has 6 representatives from larger youth networks. So, great. And let me just double check if Mr. Clehan Williams from Jamaica is here. Okay, just want to make sure I don't leave anyone behind. He couldn't come, so apologies for that. So we will start now this conversation really looking, and I'm glad the youth are here and we want you to be active. So the main discussion we want to have with you, Veronica, Davina, Suher, is about the enabling policies, because it will not happen only with academia, only with the private sector. We need to make sure that the different actors are providing policies that will really facilitate the green jobs and the necessary skills. So I will start with Veronica, looking at the German experience. We learned that according to the 2024 employment outlook of the OECD, amazing numbers that we heard is that more than 1 in 5 jobs in Germany are related to green activities. And only less than 1 in 20, so 5%, are still looking in emission-intense activities. And this is really very inspiring. So the question to you is, how does the German ministry do this? What was the type of support, the policies that you put in place to support the demand and supply for green jobs in the green skills?
Okay. If it works, does it work? Just can I take yours?
Adriana, gracias. Hello? Yes? Okay. Well, first of all, I'm really happy and excited to be here. I just talked to somebody who was nervous about being at that panel, and we shared the same feeling. So bear with me if I'm a bit nervous. But nervous because I was so excited to be here because I think it's a very well chosen topic. Thank you so much. And we have heard some thanks to organizers for this panel, but I want really to say a big shout out to Adriana, who is not only the mastermind behind today, but who is always pushing for for youth in green jobs. Really, I've got sometimes I've got the feeling that my WhatsApp blows up. So she's really extremely active. Thank you so much, Adriana. That's what we need. And I really want to answer your question, but before that, I would like, since I'm on this panel, the only one from Germany and also the only one from Europe, I would like to bring also some perspective on the framework conditions that we are living in, and then I go to the enabling factors. Okay, it's maybe also to put these numbers also in perspective. So Germany, like many other or some other countries in Europe, is confronted with a demographic challenge, which is different than from other world regions. We are faced with aging populations. We are in dear need of youth. Which means that we don't have the situation that, at least in Germany, there are some countries in Southern Europe where the situation is different, but we don't know these huge numbers of youth unemployment that are known in other parts of the world. But this is not because we are so great, it's just because we are so old. So we lack really people. And I will come to the point where I will share that this can become also a hindering factor for a green transformation. So, but first of all, to the enabling factors. I think one of the main, and there again, German system, we are a federal state. Education policy is organized and is implemented on state level, means we've got 16 different education policies, and maybe also 17, because sometimes the federal level implements also something. And another particularity, and I think this is really a key particularity, is traditionally in Germany, we have something which is not very common to other countries. We have a long tradition of vocational training. So, of course, we've got this typical career of universities, but we've got a very strong footing in training people on the job while going still to school. So people finish school, start their profession, and go to professional schools, vocational training. And another factor that is also quite typical for Germany, and it relates a bit to the 4 preconditions that you mentioned now. We've got a strong social protection system. We've got strong social partnership. Germany is known for its social partners. And this vocational training that I referred to is very, very specific to different professions and mostly self-governed. So it's the social partners, the trade unions and the business sector that develops curricula together. So not only do we have 16 different schooling, but we really have this diverse, I would say, ecosystem. And that's a general issue. We always know that the more diverse an ecosystem is, the more resilient it is. and the more innovation that can happen, because there's so different things that you can do. So that might be preconditions that are there, maybe even without taking an active approach. So this might be a kind of invisible hand just born out of tradition. But and coming back to the vocational training, when we were thinking about the decade of sustainable development education, first of all we thought about the schools, but then well, my kids at the age where I know that right from the beginning of their school career, they have been dealing with sustainable development issues at school. So from kindergarten on, they've been trained to recycle, to take care of the environment, to look after each other. So this is something that is now, I would say, I look to my younger colleagues, but maybe something that is now 20, 25 years old. So it's not just yesterday. But only in the course of this transformation, we thought of, and I still remember discussions, so that must have been around 2016, 2017, we thought about introducing sustainable development curricula into our vocational training. And there I would want to challenge you a bit, or maybe not challenge, but just bring another perspective. Of course, we're talking about green jobs, but in the end, I think you mentioned it and you just tended to it. Every job should be green. So it's not just the green jobs that we want to train people for. So that's the reason why we, of course, we have vocational training now for new kind of jobs like solar panel engineers and name it like that. But we also have sustainable development training in all our classic professions. And I know that we are focusing on youth here, but coming from a country which is aging and being faced with this quick transformation, I just want to point that we need this reskilling, retraining, not only for youth, but also for people like me already being employed and in need of learning all these new things. I would leave it like that and maybe come back afterwards.
Thank you so much, Veronica. And you say so many interesting points, and I want to just touch in few of them. Vocational training is so important, and that's one of the conversations we were having with ILO. In some of the studies that you have, is the need now to demystify the vocational training more. I think in Latin America, I don't know how it is in Asia or in Africa as well, that young people, and you tell me, they think that the jobs will come with a master's or PhD, and how many PhD we don't know driving Uber, right? So is the issue now in the demystification of that. The other issue we see now in the energy transition, investment is there, technology is there, but we are missing technical skills. And what it is? Electricians, right? So that's one of the things we want to see. Thank you also for highlighting the importance of looking at reskilling. That's another key thing. So let me now turn to Davina. Davina is a close partner of the African Development Bank, and they have been leading a lot of initiatives, including, of course, the support to establish the African Circular Economy Alliance, and that they are hosting the secretariat. And different initiatives also, like the Just Transition initiative to address climate change in the African context. So, Davina, from your perspective, we would like to learn, what do you think are the most effective initiatives that the bank has developed to support countries in the design of these policies for circular economy?
Well, thank you so much. Hello, everyone. I guess those who've been here the whole day have seen me seated up front. But yeah, the topic for this evening, this afternoon, is really very core to what we do as the Africa Development Bank. One, that we are the only resident multilateral development bank in a continent that is going to be growing into 2050. So it's a strategic area for us to be involved in how we skill the youth or reskill the the old, because of where we are at. We are at a time where development is starting to begin. There is the good side that we will not retrofit, so we're going to build clean. But there are also challenges associated with that, that our education systems still belong to the era of the colonial times. And so that hasn't helped in fast tracking, because I think what we are trying to do, even with this topic around circular economy, is how to scale and speed the interventions in a way that we can save the planet. And so going back to circular solutions that the bank has been involved with, first of all, as you mentioned, we host the Africa Circular Economy Alliance, which is a network of countries coming together to peer learn how to drive circularity. We host the secretariat, understanding that by convening and creating the visibility for that, we will be able to touch many countries together, and we don't have to be or have a foothold in all the countries if we have that alliance, because then you have a network where countries speak with each other and they're able to replicate good practices. So with that, we've created what we call, first of all, on the policy front, it's very, very important that we have regulation and policy. So we are starting with countries' national social circular economy roadmaps. Note that countries didn't have policies on waste management or policies to do with efficiencies. It's very important that they are named circular economy, because without that, it becomes very difficult to find them when we are looking for a circular economy portfolio. And of course, that comes next will be strategies and the tools. Earlier in the day, we talked about the Global Circularity Protocol. These are very important mechanisms and frameworks and tools to have if we are going to drive the change. Two, we also, on the youth side, we have jobs for youth programs. Our current president of the bank came in with very clear agenda on youth. Enabling youth is a big program at the bank. You might have heard in our climate agenda that we have a context called Youth Adapt. These are challenges for the youth to come up with solutions on climate adaptation, and they get funded every year at COP. So they announce the 10 best challenge winners, and they are funded. So this is part of encouraging the youth to get involved in innovations. But I like the idea of curriculum that the ILO representative mentioned. That is very strategic and very critical, because in Africa, you just mentioned about the jobs. On this continent, 10% is what is in the vocational and they call them TVIC, skills sector. So only 10% is there. And I think much less on the science and technology. And so we cannot transform with those low numbers. It's very, very important that skills and technology transfer become part of the equation around enabling environment. And so we need to find a way of financing that transition. And I think here I'll speak about the role of governments. Government, whether it is central government or municipal level governments, it's very important that they get involved in the transformation. One, as asset owners. For the continent, a lot of capital is held by governments. So in much of mobilizing domestic resources for whatever sector we're trying to transform, in this case, we're looking at jobs for youth, the government has to invest in education. They've done a good job traditionally, but in the whole transformation. So because they are asset owners, they have to be in the blended finance equation. So the public money has to be there to leverage the other capital owners. So we need to have government accountable for this, government leading the charge, and that's why we have the ASEA, because it's a country-led initiative. So in the whole transformation angle, it's important that we have platforms that are led by governments to ensure that we have a quick transformation. Thank you.
Davina, and thank you. And in contrast to Germany, African continent is the youngest population. We know that it's amazing for you who doesn't know. The average age in Africa is 18. It's very young generation, and the trends show that it will increase. You say something very important. You say at the beginning that the education is embedded still in this colonial time. But at the same time, the government needs to invest in education. So the question will be, which type of education, right? And if I may, so the follow-up question from you, Davina, will be how to ensure that that investment in education is really updated or is innovative. And the second, maybe looking at the vocational, I know the Tibet is quite a strong sector, but how would you suggest then that investment in the education that is really looking ahead?
So by saying traditional was that it does not match the skills on the market. You mentioned electricians for the solar panels. We will have PhDs. You mentioned PhDs driving Ubers. Maybe it's good to have very sophisticated Uber drivers. It's a service. But for the transformative sector, we lack those skills. And what we do, either we export our raw materials because we are not having the skills, of course, the capital to transform these resources, and that steals away from the value and the capital that would have remained on the continent. So let me just say this, that with a big population that we have, with the natural resources that we have, if we could have that transformation happening, then the market would respond to the resources to create value for both the youth dividend that we have and the natural capital dividend that we have. Thanks.
Thank you. Excellent. So the investment in education should be in the transformative sectors and also making more value of the natural resources. So let me now turn to Suher again. And then the question to you is, how are the children and youth major group and the youth organizations engaging, advocating for the integration of intergenerational responsibility, green skills, equity? I know you've been very active in UNEA, in the COPs. You are going now to the Summit of the Future. So how is that? And then you've been also advocating for this real engagement, no? How you call it? Meaningful engagement of youth. So what's this advocating work that you are doing to really ensure that youth are equipped with the necessary green skills?
So yeah, thank you for that question. I think to that we will get the opportunity to brief a bit about what CYMG does. So the logo that you are seeing on the screen, the greenest one, I don't know the specific color code, but that's perhaps called the bottle green, right? So you can see CYMG, which is the Children and Youth Major Group to UNEP. So this is actually an umbrella mechanism for youth networks, organizations, and individuals committed to addressing climate change, biodiversity loss, and chemicals-based and pollution issues. So we are the constituency, we are the formal mechanism and the mandated mechanism to United Nations Environment Program to facilitate the participation, meaningful and effective participation of young people in policy processes. So that means our mandate is to engage young people in the policy negotiation. But at the same time, we are not obviously a member state or a party, so we cannot negotiate, but we can provide advisory opinions, we can provide suggestions, we can make statements and engage with high-level ministers and the officials to make sure that our opinions, our expectations and demands are reflected. So obviously, as a mechanism, as CYMG, we don't do skilling or reskilling because that's not our responsibility. But our organizations who are working on ground, they do that. And they also face a lot of challenges, right? As Adriana was saying, that Africa is incredibly young, right? And so does Asia and many other global south countries and the regions. So we have a lot of young people who are facing a lot of challenges in their own country to promote green jobs or perhaps acquire green skills. So we count on their lived experience. We bring that to the policy negotiations and we inform the negotiator. These are the challenges that our young people are facing. So whatever you're setting as goals through the climate convention, through the biodiversity convention, through other instruments, that has to be solution oriented. So you have to solve these problems through the policy instruments that you are creating or the decisions you are making in every COP or every high level meetings, perhaps the OPN forum and others, so that the young people can literally contribute to the goals that you're setting and not making it just a document or a paper where the convention is just mentioned and not implemented. So that's our primary work. So now, few engagement of avenues or milestones that I want to share is that you may already heard about the United Nations Environment Assembly, UNIA, right? You may heard about the climate COP. Many of you have attended, and here you have the OPN forum where Youth for Climate / UNDP funded these amazing young people who are working on ground on green jobs, and your experience matters, right? And we are bringing that through the platform. So we want to connect more with you in the coming days and also bring you to our own major group. But what I was saying, that through the engagement in the negotiations and the big high-level meetings of the United Nations, we are actually making sure, we are actually striving to make sure that our expectations, our demands are incorporated. Some of the successful, advocacy interventions we have, for instance, that last UNIA in Nairobi, the United Nations Environment Assembly at the 6th session, we successfully could negotiate a resolution on the sustainable lifestyle and could get the Green Just for Youth Pact incorporated. So did we with other resolutions that were adopted, like the Ocean Action, and then other like chemicals based on pollution and other resolutions. Because green jobs is a thing that touches the basis on different sectors, right, and the skills, and it's a matter of our existence on the planet. Because if we don't have jobs, all these instruments are not going to feed us. So that's all of our work, and that's how we are doing. So I'm just cutting my short because we are lacking time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Suher. And this reminds me also one of the dialogues we had with youth, when the youth delegate women from Colombia, and she says something very important. She says youth jobs are peace, and in communities where there's no job, we know violence, and we know that is more vulnerable for young girls as well. So, yes, excellent. We are running late of time. I have a second question for you. I will ask you to be very brief, or we can ask just to have a takeaway. Vinicius, I will invite you at the end just to have some reaction. So I want to highlight also the role of my dear colleague Veronica Tomei. She's one of the main donors of Go for SDGs. So, and I've been bombarding her with the information on that. But international cooperation is very important. She's also supporting PAGE initiative. So, Veronica, I understand, and Germany has a different demographic, but I know you are very engaged in the international negotiations. So, how do you see what type of strategies can enhance really the interministerial and the international cooperation to support these green skills, the reskilling, and really ensure that there is an inclusive, green, sustainable transition?
Thank you very much, Adriana, and thank you very much, Suhai. I would like to enhance immediately your points. At UNEA, I was at UNEA as well. I was also very happy that Go for SDGs was included, the pact was included in a Sustainable Lifestyles Initiative. And at UNEA 6, the German delegation included 2 youth delegates. Those are our 2 youth delegates that we nominate each year to take part in international sustainable development negotiations, traditionally for the HLPF. So sometimes in some years we have enough funding to send them also to other conferences, like also the plastic negotiations, but they were also at UNEA, and we think that this is extremely important, and also not to be just a lip service, but this year they were the ones that presented Germany's view on SDG 16 review. Last year they chose SDG 11, so then behind the German sign there was a youth delegate speaking for Germany. I think Adriana, I think it's extremely important, the issue that you raised, because when we spoke in the first round about enabling conditions, and I think that when we talk about the transformation to a more green economy, then it's a whole of society and whole of governance approach. And you were talking about the strategies that ministries amongst themselves can adopt. And I've just recently looked it up, but we have a number of German governments, German ministries that have each ministry an individual advisory youth council. And we just had very recently, for the very first time, a meeting of all these advisory youth councils together. Some of them are the same membership, and some it's overlapping, and some not at all. So that was quite interesting. And at the Ministry for Economy and Climate Action, we have a body which was a couple of years ago in my ministry, the Environment Ministry. We have a body which is it's called Climate Alliance, and it's a multi-stakeholder body. And one, we call it a bank. So really like in Parliament, one bank is the youth bank. So it's an integral part of this alliance and of this climate alliance, and all the opinions of the climate alliance that feed immediately into the ministry's policies. They are composed out of these groups, and one major component is the youth group. In our ministry, in the Environment Ministry, we have a very strong youth cooperation as well. And since I've got a colleague here from the European Sustainable Development Network sitting in the room, I just want to highlight that we are also organizing now for, I think, the 4th or 5th time. We have organized a youth segment to the annual conference of the European Sustainable Development Network. So we have different hinges, I would say, where we have create possibilities for youth to engage in a meaningful way. And that might be also one of the reasons why we have advocated so strongly also in the past, and I hope there will be a good result for the the Pact for New Generations now, that is hopefully being adopted in 2 weeks' time. I was short enough.
Thank you so much for giving these concrete examples of meaningful engagement of youth in Germany and in Europe. So I think to her those are good models to replicate. Davina, very quickly, and I will turn. I'm not following my script now. So you were talking also about the importance of government in investment, looking at education, but what will be now turning to the bank? What are the key investments that you see the banks, development banks should do really to accelerate the equipment of green skills for youth?
So, as a bank, of course, we go through our key drivers of development because we're a development bank. One, for our continent, is energy access. As you know, for Africa, 600 million are still without electricity. So that is a big challenge for any sort of development. You're going to need energy, but it's also an opportunity. And so behind that opportunity, we've created what is called around the Sahara, the belt that is the desert south of Morocco. And that for that, because it's a desert, it has high radiation. And we've created what is called Desert to Power. It's a 10 gigawatt capacity solar program around 11 countries that are part of that region, the Sahel region. That comes with jobs. Now, the scaling of the capacities that are needed would go with that. So that program includes jobs for youth. And what we've done to make sure that we can be held accountable for that, we're coming up with, we started it with gender. It's called a gender marker for all our projects. 70% of our projects have to have a very clear indicator on the impact on women. We're starting the same for the youth, so that there's very clear youth indicator, a youth marker in our projects. It's very easy to say, "Oh, we've created jobs," but what kind of jobs were they when you do your log frame for the project? So we really want to have very tangible ways to track how these jobs are generated. Two, our private sector department is working on a youth, they call it a youth bank, ideally to try and create dedicated financing mechanism for the youth. And what we know is it might not look like traditional way that we do business. One, understanding that to date, 4 out of 5 Africans own a mobile phone. So they transact their business on their mobile phone. Half of them have internet. And those are the youth, mostly the youth. And so as we revolutionize how we do business, that will be our new target market. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing this very concrete example. So, Suher, I know, and I'm very happy that after the OPN forum, you are going to the Summit of the Future. I know you are organizing some events, and we are doing a joint side event. So, what is for you? What will be the key messages that you are bringing as a youth constituency, and how do you see what will be an ideal expected outcome that will advance the youth, the meaningful engagement of youth and the green skills?
Yeah, I must say that's a tricky question. We cannot maybe presume some of the outcomes of the summit of the future, but obviously we can always talk about our expectations. Yeah, it's correct. But I'm not going to New York for some reason. Obviously, the reality is that as a global South youth, it's not easy for us to get the US visa. So I'm coming to Brazil. I love global South more, and I'm sending someone and another colleague who has like a global North passport to New York to organize that. So yeah, my colleagues and my spirit will be there in Newark. We are organizing a youth forum on future of the environment, where we will be discussing the jobs of the future, the science policy and people interface, and the intergenerational collaboration for the meaningful engagement of young people to protect the rights of young people to live in a sustainable, healthy, sustainable, clean environment. So the expected outcomes, obviously, there we already are engaging the top level UN officials, like UNEP executive director will be there. The UNIA 7 president, the minister from the Oman will be there too, and some other presidencies are also convening the forum with us, like the G20 presidency, Brazil is there, and then EU presidency, Hungary will be there too. So we are actually looking for increased commitments from their side for contributing and investing for the skilling of young people to thrive in a green economy, and obviously supporting their engagement in the policies relevant, in the policy negotiations and the discussions relevant to this environment and the green jobs and the skills. Apart from that, we are also having another session, a side event, official side event with UNEP, ILO, UNICEF, and some other partners, member states. I think we have Cyprus, India, Portugal, where we'll be obviously engaging with around like 500 people in a very big hall, and we will obviously discuss about all these challenges that young people are facing when it comes to green jobs and skills, and then we will put forward some suggestions. At the same time, I'm just adding a few successful advocacy strategies. Some of our colleagues who works on the green jobs and economy were following the Summit of the Future process from the very beginning, and we are engaged in the consultations on the drafts of the Pact for the Future and the Declaration on the Future Generations, where we try to put forward more environment component, obviously as suggestions, like promoting green jobs for young people, and then obviously there are a lot of suggestions like the plastics treaty and the climate one and other things. But I think in some cases we have been a bit frustrated that a lot of components that we expected to be in the drafts, and I think it gradually got updated, right? We have never seen enough reference to environment, because for the Summit of the Future, environment is not a priority, but youth is a priority. That's a good thing. We are capitalizing on that. We tried our best, but we are not obviously getting demotivated, even if it's not there, because I know that our youngsters who are here will bringing this to the ground and obviously implement whatever we discussed today. Yeah, we have a lot of other plans in the coming days. We are trying to engage in the UNFCCC COP. Perhaps I'll not be there. My colleagues will be there from other youth constituencies and obviously the youth advisory group. We are also engaging in some processes which is not perhaps got a lot of attention, but is successful and has more potentiality to provide further inputs to the to the green jobs, like the Montreal Protocol one, where the new target is to phase down the HFCs and contribute more for the sustainable cooling and energy efficiency. We are actually organizing a youth forum on climate protection there, where our priority is to focus more on the gender mainstreaming and then skilling of young people in the energy sector to create more, the jobs that needs vocational training that Adriana and many of us were mentioning. So yeah, these are the successful things. Hopefully we are going to be successful. And obviously we have a lot of past examples that I'm not telling again, but I always, welcome you to visit our website to have a look on those. Thank you.
Excellent. Great to see you are so active in so many different topics. Vinicius, let me turn to you. Any reaction and a quick takeaway before we move to the other part?
Hello. Yeah, no, it was an amazing panel. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just have perhaps 2 or 3 quick points. The first one is thank you, Veronica, for bringing the demographic transition, right? Because I think when we discuss youth, you have to discuss youth into a dynamic perspective, né? Because the youth eventually you become old as well, right? So we're talking about how population is structured and how we are dealing with the different transitions. And the most structured transitions we have is precisely the environmental transition, the digital transition, and the demographic transition. And that happens in the context of high inequalities, political polarization, and of course, we're all scared about security and war, and you're close to that scenario, no? So these are the main things that are happening today. And when we discuss demographic transition, and I'm speaking from my background as a scholar on development studies, in the 80s, 70s, 80s, people were concerned about how to get rich before become older, right? So that was more or less the challenge of the nations, right? So basically, increase productivity. So when we reach a stage in which the ratio between economic active population and inactive population deteriorates, so we have enough productivity, and people, basically your retirees can be sustained by your workforce that's will be shrinking. That was the challenge in many of the countries in Europe and Japan. To some extent, US, they've gone through it. And then they realized, it's not only about getting rich, but getting rich in a sustainable way. So they need to change, the entire development model to adapt. And they can do that because they have this enabling environment. For Africa, it's a different thing. So it's not about getting rich before getting older, but getting rich in a sustainable way and in a different way. So it's not going to replicate the same development model, but a different one. So that's what we're discussing now. And some countries like Brazil and China is moving very fast, actually, in terms of getting older, are in a kind of midway. So because they have to really accelerate that. So I think this is a very important discussion. The second one is about green jobs. And when we talk about green jobs, the first thing is to measure it. Because if you don't get measured, we can't manage it, right? So we need to have very detailed models looking at occupations and accounts, looking at the employment profiles, and identifying what is a green job. And then there are three types of layers. The one is what is the green job, the job in the green sectors, which are the sectors related to environmental sustainability. The second layer is greening the existing jobs. And that's why we also have this commitment in the pact, right? And the clear example is the construction sector. Now, that has to go through a greening process, the entire construction sector and other sectors. Then there is the job that it's not green and is not going to be green and has to disappear, because if you want to be serious about transition, you have to phase out fossil fuel. You have to phase out coal mining. So these jobs, they're not going to go green. They have to disappear. So that's basically what I think we should be aiming at. So that's what how we in the ILO we put the three things. And finally, I think I totally agree. I think the participation of young people in this debate is so essential, because this is about the future, not for you, for your kids, and that's the basis of the sustainability. So these are my main takeaways. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much to all these excellent panelists, and thank you, Vinicius. And very happy also that we have the three UN agencies here. So I'm going to give now the floor to our colleague from UNICEF, Youssef Abdel Jalil, for the next panel. We won't have time for questions and answers. Unless there's a burning question, while the new panel starts, I think we can take one question. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much, Adriana. I will start, for the sake of time, calling upon the panelists to come and join me. Okay. So let me start by asking Bettina Susanna Hoffman. Yes. See. And then Alicia Moreno. Let's see. And then Aulia Hegarsari. So this is the last session, but it's not the least important session, as you know. Not at all. And I want to go back to the pact for green jobs for youth, because my colleague and friend Vinicius has really elaborated on this pact, and it's for us, it's really a serious pact in this regard in terms of our commitment to the green job for youth. And I would like to bring 2 points before we start our discussion, because this discussion will be focused on the skills, on the knowledge, and on the experiential learning. That's the focus of this last session. But before I do that, I think there is we in UNICEF are in the business of children, which are from 0 to 18. And I think it's important to keep in mind there will be a focus here on the university level. But there is an important need to focus on greening the whole cycle of learning, and it's not just learning in the primary school, the life learning we need to green. And in this regard, it's important that we have the seeds of environmental education in preschool, in primary school. We are now starting a program in Belém, Pará, in the state of Pará, about environmental education. This is an important thing to highlight here, and as well as give importance to what Veronica mentioned about vocational training, technical training. That's a key one in this regard. And the second point I wanted to make is I want to make sure that that you know that our commitment is clear, and we should also, in a way, green the concept of human capital. We should look at it again together with the World Bank, with UNDP, to know what is this human capital that we are talking about. There is a need to have a cognitive capital already in the first few years of life. Then we need to continue and look at what are the skills, and we will get to this. So I have 3 panelists here to look at some of these issues. We will try to respect time. My first panelist is let me actually. Do you mind if I make a change in the plan? No. So what I thought we should do is that since we have a young entrepreneur here that is actually doing the job in this regard, and her name is Miss Aulia Her Garsari. Miss Aulia Her Garsari, and she is a youth entrepreneur at the Garda Pangan Foundation, a food bank which is committed to combating food loss and waste in Indonesia. She is also a winner of the Youth for Climate Award in 2024 for the Open Planet Network Forum. So we want to give her an applause. And I want to say that her name, Aulia, is partly Arabic. It means the first. So that's why probably I made it. So, Aulia, as a young entrepreneur, what green or soft skills have been most crucial for you, and how do you believe collaboration can be fostered to create more opportunity to youth in sustainable sector? And I just want to add something which doesn't complicate. If you know of any innovative approach, especially in the area of the food sector, please share with us. Okay? Should I?
So, first of all, thank you so much for having me and sit right here with the honorable speaker, Mr. Yusuf. So, the first crucial green skills that I can address is the ability to discern the environmental issues in our surrounding or keenly observe the local problems. So, if I can say, Garda Pangan itself is driven by the concern over a substantial food loss and waste in Indonesia. In fact, food loss and waste is the largest component of waste in Indonesia, but still largely remain unaddressed. So yeah, that's why we choose the ability to discern. And the second one is the continuous improvement. So continuous improvement is the key of growth of Garda Pangan, because as the part of Garda Pangan, initially the youth is not expert about food loss and waste. So, um, sorry, um, the continuous improvement is important because it makes us keep improving and learning, and we have the determinations to achieve our goal and accomplish, and then um, there's one saying, actually, sailing while building the ship. So it means that the journey may not always perfect, but for us, keep improving and keep doing the assessment as the evaluation is important. And then there's the other value. It is being not too complacent, so we're not easily satisfied with the good results. And the last one is the resiliency. It is important um, to keep the value, and then it reminds us with our value when the things get tough. Yeah, and then actually in Indonesia, the green skills is start to rise because some of the schools, some of the university, they start to uh, do the eco living, and they sometimes invite us to give the workshops or um, do some seminars there. So yeah, that's the crucial green skills that we can address for now, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I, I mean, your faith and your commitment and your drive is encouraging us very much. And you mentioned something earlier that we need to be discerning. We need to be learning about environment, and you mentioned the food sector. And the food sector is going to be key for the green job and for the greening in general. So thank you for that. I'm going to go now quickly to Susan Hoffman, or Bettina Susan Hoffman, who is the representative of ARIUSA. ARIUSA is the Alliance of the Ibero-American Networks of University for Sustainability and the Environment, and of the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil Sustainability Network. So it's a large program, no, isn't it, to be in charge of all of that. And I have a question for you, or a question and a half. The first one is, how can the project developed by ARIUSA with UNEP support accelerate the diagnosis and action on green skills and green job in higher education in general, and especially for a circular economy in plastic? And I want to add something. As a university professor, what green skills or soft skill would you consider essential for students for the future? Thanks a lot. Can I give you this one? Yeah.
Okay, I think I take this one. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having me. I think it's a great opportunity to discuss issues that we are facing, that I'm facing at my everyday work. I think most of universities in Latin America haven't been subjected for major revisions of their curricula. So our curricula, they are not really well prepared for our sustainability challenges. And what we can observe, but what we also don't have, we don't have this official diagnosis of what we are lacking, or how much are we lacking of our preparation. So what ARIUSA is promoting, to have these diagnoses, to have numbers, to have official recommendations, I think this is something very important for us now in order to promote these revisions that we need to do. And generally, universities, they are very rigid in their curricula, because you have this the staff, the professors, which are highly specialized. So to bring changes and to bring innovation in curricula is a hard challenge. Having official recommendations, having a network as ARIUSA backing certain recommendations will facilitate, certainly. to bring these new issues like circular economy. Because when we look at our curricula, I think even climate change hasn't been brought enough to our curricula, and circular economy a lot less, because it's even a newer issue than climate change. So when we look at literacy in climate change or literacy in circular economy for plastics especially, universities are lagging a lot behind. We see these issues in post-graduation, but in our graduation curricula, it hasn't arrived. And I'm speaking from the engineering department. So at least in the engineering department, it should be standard, and it's not. So in other curriculum, when we look at social sciences, it's lagging even more behind. And then I'm coming to the second question, right? Because when we talked a lot about vocational training and what are the exact skills that we would need, and my vision, especially for Latin America, is yes, sure, we should strengthen a lot vocational training, and we need to strengthen skills in technology. But what I think is more important is that we bring basic literacy in environmental and social questions to all our curricula. So it has to be in social sciences and life sciences and in the engineering sciences. I need my students to be literate in circular economy and to be literate in especially climate change. And this doesn't happen yet. So I think we need to bring a deep understanding of our challenges to all the curricula in order to bring new mindsets. And I think it goes a lot together with what Aulia said. It's a beautiful name. What do we need? I need this generation to come with a certain mindset to understand what does it mean. And a term that I really actually prefer is a regenerative economy. Even I think it's stronger. I have to bring the terms of strong sustainability to this generation, because we can't work anymore with this ESG, what is a lot more marketing than real sustainability. And for this, I need this deep understanding. I need I need the youth to come to the market as entrepreneurs willing to face all these difficulties, because it's different than in Europe. We don't have these green jobs ready. There is not that big market of green jobs. Actually, I need to prepare the students to go out there and to do the green job, even even that there are a lot of obstacles to that. So this, I think, is the key message that I would like to bring here, that it's about literacy, about deep understanding, and about the skills to do it, even though it is really difficult.
Thank you very much. That's a very valuable perspective, and it converges with what we said earlier, that we need that basic literacy to even start earlier in life. Those are to be foundational, and then continue at the primary school, at the first level of secondary school, at the second level of secondary school, and all of. But you mentioned that the gap analysis is still going on regarding what's needed. And the university, we need them to play an important role in this regard. We're not down in playing the role of tertiary education. We just need to build for it, and then they play this role, and they transform the curriculum in this regard. Yeah. No, thank you very much in this regard. Now I'm going to move, for the sake of time, to our third, last but not least. That's Alicia Moreno. She's a professor in environment and regional trade agreements at the faculties of law and economic sciences at the University of Buenos Aires in Argentina. Alicia, I have a question and a half. The first one is, as the next generation needs to be equipped with the necessary green skills, how can universities scale up their green skills, and align curricula for transformative green jobs and market? And if you can talk a little bit of how can we foster collaboration with youth in this regard? Over to you.
Thank you so much for the invitation, Adriana, especially for her great job pushing this agenda. Two first challenges. First, communication. Do we all know what is green skills? And necessary green skills are the same for the Global South, for the North? No. So this communication is necessarily to be pushed. I know UNEP is working on innovation and communication. It is in the strategy, the UNEP strategy I read, and so it's very important to tackle this challenge. The other challenge, to be short, is we need to do we have the market demand for these green skills? We are in this community, it's okay, we know what it is, we know what we need, but does the private sector or the other sector, the consumer sector, demanding this? Are we aware that we need still a lot more of demanding in order to push all the green skills agenda? That's the 2 points I want to remark.
Yeah, no, then those are honest points as well. And I saw also, I heard today from Davina when she was talking that we need to develop a taxonomy about all of these things. I think it's key so that we are reading from the same book. I heard somebody mention, in a UN conference about building back better. And somebody said, what is building back better? Is it blah, blah, blah? So we want to avoid the situation in which nobody is telling us green job or green is blah blah. So I think it's important to develop that communication that you mentioned in this regard, and also create the demand, or at least develop the demand side for this type of green job that we have. So now I won't ask you a question, but I would like to give you the opportunity to add an important point or 2 points to this discussion that we've had about skill, about knowledge, about experiential learning, about also the realism of all of this. And I will start with you, Susanna.
Yeah, I think what is very central here is what are the green jobs that we offer for our youth here in Latin America, and it's so different than, for example, we don't have the Circular Economy Action Plan in Latin America in place, which is already in place in Europe. So there are so many regulations in place in Germany, which in Germany or in Europe, for example, which provide these green jobs market and that we don't have here in Latin America. So I think, and this is, I'm taking from the former panel where Beatrice said that a lot of things have to go together here because we don't have the time. We have to come together. We can't wait for politics to generate the green jobs market. We need to prepare our students for a market which actually isn't in place yet. So this is why I think it's so important to talk about the mindset and to talk about this regenerative mindset that we need our youth to go out there, and when they come into this corporate reality where it's not about green, actually it's about money, so they have to stand their man there and say, no, we have to do the greening from within. I think this is something that we in the global south we have to face, and this is very difficult, but it's our reality and it has to go together because we can't wait.
Alicia?
I would like to address Bettina's words about curriculum. It's a very complex process, decision-making complex process. In my case, University of Buenos Aires is like a small city, 300,000 community, students, staff, professors. Decision-making is a democratic process in University of Buenos Aires. We have democratic elections, representative of students and of professors gather in a council which make the decision on curricula, finance, organization of the whole university. So it's easy to change a curricula? No, and I go back to what I said before. If there is not a clear demand on that, engineers, lawyers, no talk, will be okay. When it is necessary, we'll do it. So it's difficult. I
Thank you.
yes.
Okay. So, in line with what Susan said, and it is our job to make the young have enough literacy about the greens, right? So, actually, in our case, most of the volunteers come to Garapangan, they have no idea about what is food waste, what is food loss, and while they join our program to rescuing the food surplus and distributing to the food insecure community, they help us to deliver the message of the food surplus. They also have the ability to learn about environment while they have no idea about it, and they have no background about it too. And then the important point is like now they become our agent of change because they help us to disseminate the awareness of the food waste and food loss. And uh, s- I can say that it's equally significant because Gardapangan become a place where the young people in my town or the other town around it learn about environment, discovering the green skills, the green jobs. Also, some of the volunteers now are discovering the green jobs. For example, um, they join research about how to count the food loss and waste in some place in Indonesia, and also um, they also have the ability to be a public speaker, to deliver the food loss and waste too. And then um, the last one is I can proudly say that most like 80% of volunteer in Gadapangan is young people. So it's like um, we are proud because we can gather the young people and they can learn green skills. They can discover green jobs through our movement. So yeah, in this process, we try to keep learning and keep improving about the skills, and we try also to enrich our literacy about it, so they have both like skills and theory, they are in the same level. So that's the message.
Thank you very much. I would like you to give. So I will not be able to summarize everything. Is straightforward. I want to really thank this panel. Which brought I put 3 or 4 points. First, we are inspired by the pioneers, including you, in Indonesia and others. That's an important element for us. We are in agreement about defining and also being clear about the taxonomy of what greening. We are also in agreement that we need to green the whole life learning cycle. That's an important one in that regard, and also know where it create the demand and know where is the demand for this in this regard. And then one point I wanted to add is that I heard Vinicius mentioning that there are some jobs that we should not have. I one time what we should not have. I heard one time that the Stone Age ended not because the stones are no longer around. So the oil and the gas could end. We can still have oil and gas, but so to keep that in mind. So I want to thank you, and really, Adriana, thank you very much. And I want to confirm the commitment of UNICEF to work with UNEP and ILO as part of this arrangement of the Pact Green Job for Youth. Thank you very much. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Muito obrigado. Thank you very much. So Adriana, you want to come here? We want you around here to say we want Adriana around. You know,
Thank you. Thanks to all of you for staying late. If you have questions, you can come and we can answer any question. Oh, yeah. So thanks so much. I'm really happy that we have done this together with Suher, who is in the Youth Advisory Group, and the through agencies. The idea is really to continue, and Alicia, just to respond to that, in the pact we are working with the private sector. So the idea is to have this conversation on what are the demands for green skills, matching them with academia. So that's why we really were happy to have here Bettina with us, Susana, Bettina. We are working with university networks on this, and yeah, updating the curricula is important. And we are also aware that is not only in the high education sector, but is also in the Tibet, in the vocational education. And then the third element is the policy. So we're working on these three. So thank you so much. Very happy for you to join, and let's continue the work.
Definitely. We're gonna make it.